interest in films started when I was very little, watching The Wizard of Oz, not only on TV, but I used to watch the record player and watch the label turn, and because the record of the movie actually had songs and some of the dialogue, so it told the story.
So
That's one of my earliest memories as a kid, is listening to the Wizard of Oz record.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting. So I'm assuming you've seen the film many times?
Yes, probably at least 10 times in my life.
Yeah. One of the things that I put in the notes for you is now we're in a position where anyone can see The Wizard of Oz whenever they want. If they have HBO Max, it's always there. Or if they want to rent it, or if they want to buy it, it's available. But a long time ago, this is my dog Barkley, by the way.
Aww.
He's a year old. He's a very good boy, aren't you? So Oz was like a yearly event. It would be on television only once a year, and all the kids would wait for that big day when each year you could see it. And for the last 46 years, people have been able to own a copy, and now they can stream a copy. So its availability to generations is quite remarkable. And it all goes back to the book, which was written in 1900.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a testament to the original author of his, the characters that he created. And of course, the film was different than the book, and translated what was a children's book into a film that could appeal to both adults and children. So that's what's exciting.
That's really cool.
So do you have any questions specific?
Yes. Why do you think this movie was in the AFI Top 100?
I think it is probably one of the top 5 most beloved films of all time. That's my guess. When they do these ratings, and it's kind of subjective, and different people have different opinions. But especially in the United States, The Wizard of Oz is popular all over the world. But the fact that for decades it was a television event for American children to be able to see The Wizard of Oz once a year when you didn't have that kind of choice. There wasn't home video. That really helped to increase its stature and popularity. And as the years have gone on and more time has elapsed since it was made, people recognize the amazing technological advances they were able to come up with. Color photography had only been perfected 3 years earlier. And to film in color at that time required incredibly powerful hot lights. And what the cast went through while they were filming it, the studio sets were over 100 degrees. They couldn't have air conditioning because they couldn't have the noise. And of course, this is many, many years ago. They didn't have the technology that they have today. So against all odds, I think the remarkable thing is that a film that was made that long ago still resonates in 2026 with children of all ages, meaning children, adults, and grandparents, and everyone feels something. And I also think it has to do with the subject matter. There's no place like home.
Yes. I don't think there'll ever be another movie like that. I don't think there's ever going to be a movie that's 80 years later. It's just going to be talked about still.
I agree with you. It's remarkable in that respect, and it unifies people because you might have found out, your friends in school, and even when you were younger, probably all of you had seen this movie. It was something that everybody shares as a commonality. And, I remember when I was a little kid and it'd be on TV, my cousin was scared of the witch. And he would hide behind the couch in their living room when the witch was on the screen because he was too scared of the witch. And
Yeah.
it is a little bit scary for little ones. But the popularity has never really waned. And I think that's the most important thing. The documentary you watched was aired on television, doing the math now, 36 years ago on CBS in honor of the film's 50th anniversary. And the man who made the documentary was the son of the actor who played the Tin Man.
It's pretty cool.
So he was paying homage to his dad. And of course, he was a very well-respected documentary filmmaker. So the special was indeed special. But I think it does a really good job of condensing what is such a long backstory into helping anyone who watches it understand how it was made, why it was made, and why it still is a success today. The key thing that got it started to be put into production, and I believe they talk about this in the documentary, was that 2 years before The Wizard of Oz came out, Walt Disney had released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It was a huge, unprecedented success in terms of the finances of the box office. All around the world, people were going to see Snow White. And this kind of turned a light bulb on for the studio, saying we need to make films for the whole family that embrace this kind of fantasy. So that's what motivated MGM to buy the rights to the Wizard of Oz book, which had already been around for almost 40 years by that time. They bought the rights, and MGM was at that time the most successful of all the big studios. And so they literally put hundreds and hundreds of staff people assigned to making this film. I can't even find the right words to express the enormity of what they had, MGM, at their fingertips, because the way that movies were made then, the studios had thousands of employees. They had their own dressmakers and woodworkers and painters and, of course, screenwriters and composers. And so all the people that worked on the movie were all employees of the studio. It was a very different system than what we have today in the movie business. But all those people had one focus, and that was to try to make an unprecedented great movie. And I think they succeeded.
The documentary said that, I have a question. The documentary said that Gone with the Wind did more in box office that year. Why do you think it did?
Because Gone with the Wind was a movie for adults, and the ticket price for an adult was a lot more than for a child. A child's admission to a movie at that time when it opened was 5 cents. And for $1, it would be the adult price, or maybe even 50 cents. And Gone with the Wind was a different movie in that it's 4 hours long, and they opened it with reserved seats as a premium film going experience. It didn't go to regular theaters for 2 years until after it had played those expensive engagements. So Gone with the Wind is the film that, when you adjust money for inflation, Gone with the Wind is the biggest grossing movie of all time. When you figure out that the price of a movie ticket was as low as it was compared to what you pay now. Wizard of Oz had a lot of child admissions, but they also, and I put this in the notes for you, there is this anachronistic rumor. There is something that is not true, but is perpetuated. People think The Wizard of Oz was a failure and didn't start to make money until it was on television. That's not true. What happened was the movie opened to huge, great reviews, and theaters were having huge lines of audiences. And 2 weeks after it opened, World War II began in Europe. So MGM had counted on being able to send the movie all over the world. And with the exception of England and maybe a few other countries, they weren't able to get any international money until the World War II had ended. And once World War II ended, they were able to make the film available all around the world, and it recouped its costs.
Interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
It is. And most people who don't know the truth, and this happens a lot with Hollywood rumors. There used to be a famous actor whose name was Cary Grant. And people used to always imitate him and say that he said, "Judy, Judy, Judy." Well, this is an old story, but he never said Judy, Judy, Judy. But it was a rumor that people had perpetuated. There are many other things like that. So one of the other rumors is The Wizard of Oz was a flop at the box office. And that is absolutely not true. It was a huge success, but the success had to be taken in the context of that they had lost half the world for distribution to recoup their costs. It was the most expensive film ever made up to that time. And then a couple of months later, Gone with the Wind cost more.
What do you think are the most iconic scenes of Wizard of Oz in your opinion?
That's a great question, Jack. I think certainly Judy Garland singing Over the Rainbow is iconic. I think the Munchkinland sequence is very iconic. I think also when Dorothy and her friends first head to the Emerald City, that's very iconic. And who rang that bell? You know, all that goes on at Oz and in the Emerald City. And then, of course, I would say at the end of the movie, or toward the end of the movie, when Dorothy and her friends are trying to escape the witch and end up fulfilling the wizard's request and getting her broomstick and bringing it back to the wizard. I think those are the most iconic scenes. But we really can't underscore the importance of the Munchkinland sequence because it was MGM's idea to film the Kansas sequences in black and white and have them look very drab. And then when Dorothy opens the door and walks into Munchkinland and suddenly everything's color, it's still kind of breathtaking all these years later. But imagine what would have been 87 years ago when color was something people didn't see in the movies hardly at all. And suddenly, she opens the door and there's this amazing set of Munchkinland. And, all of those plants and set items and all that was done by hand by craftspeople at that studio. It's still astounding when you watch it and you look at the detail. What's great is that now we have technology that makes it more amazing to look at because we have better technology to make use of the film and make the film look better than it did when it came out.
It's really cool.
Yes, it is. I'm still a fan.
Me too. Are there any little known facts or gossip you can share about this movie?
Yes. I can share with you some things that aren't true. There's a big rumor that in the back of the cornfield, after Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, they think that in the background that somebody hung themselves on the set. It's absolutely not true. It was a large bird that you see in the background. But telling people it's a large bird doesn't get people excited, but saying, oh, there was a terrible tragedy when they made The Wizard of Oz, and there was somebody hung themselves on the set. Did not happen.
Yeah.
I think that no one involved in the film could have anticipated how long it has perpetuated and remained a timeless classic. I think that's an important part of trivia. And of course, to your point in your question earlier, it is estimated to have been seen by more people than any other film in history. It didn't make the most money like Gone with the Wind did, but because of the television screenings and the popularity of them, it is estimated to be the most commonly seen film in history.
It's amazing.
It is. And it made a huge star out of Judy Garland. And when you look at her performance in the book, Dorothy's supposed to be about 9 or 10 years old. In the movie, Judy Garland was 16 when she made the movie. So it's very interesting because she had such talent as an actress. She has to carry the movie, basically, because it's all built around her. And her ability as an actress to work as part of an ensemble with the other actors and yet hold her own, and with that magnificent singing voice, that was remarkable in and of itself. There were some problems during the movie, and I think they talk about this in the documentary. When they were filming Munchkinland, and the bad witch, the Wicked Witch of the West, gets surrounded by the red smoke and disappears, Margaret Hamilton, the actress who played the Wicked Witch, was supposed to be sent down under the set with an elevator. And something went wrong and she was badly burned. She burned her face, she burned her hands, and she had to be in the hospital for 2 months. And they had to shoot around her. But happily, it did not have long-term negative effects. She lived for decades later. And she also lived long enough to participate in events in the 1970s and 80s where she would reunite with other cast members from The Wizard of Oz, and they'd be on television and talk about it. And she's also supposed to be a very nice lady, but that was very serious, and it shut down the production for about 2-3 weeks. But even more tragic than that was when they started filming, the Tin Man wasn't played by the actor you see now. The actor you see now is a guy named Jack Haley. And MGM borrowed him because he was under contract to studio 20th Century Fox. They borrowed him to replace the actor that was originally cast as the Tin Man. The actor who was supposed to be the Tin Man was a gentleman named Buddy Ebsen. And he later did the Beverly Hillbillies television show and all sorts of other television shows. But at the time, he was a young man who was under contract, and he was known for being a good dancer. And the silver makeup that they used on his face to make him look like a Tin Man was actually poisoning him. It got into his lungs, and he was rushed to the Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and they weren't sure if he was going to live. It was that serious.
It's crazy.
So they had to recast the role, and one of the other things that happened as a result of that was the head of the MGM studio, L.B. Mayer, in a very foolish behavior, basically blackballed at Buddy Ebsen, saying, you got yourself sick. So he couldn't get a job, like, as a performer for close to 10 years. It really hurt his career. His career turned around later in television, and I got to meet him once when I was very young and he was very old. But we have his recording of singing If I Only Had a Heart, but we don't have any of the footage. Most of the footage that was cut out of the movie does not survive, but we have little pieces of it.
It's cool.
So those are interesting stories. There is another apocryphal, meaning not true, trivia about the little people, who they called they used the term which we don't use today. They called them the Singer Midgets. It was a group of little people that performed in theaters all around the country. And they were all staying in a hotel near the MGM studio. And you probably saw in the documentary, I think they talk a little bit about, the Munchkins would get drunk and they were hard to manage. That was all not true. They were professionals. They showed up and did their work. And many of the Munchkins lived to be quite elderly. And when I first started working on promoting the film for home video, we had, I think, 12 or 13 surviving Munchkins who were then very elderly but lovely people. And we would have events where people who owned video stores could meet the Munchkins, and they would tour all around the country. This was back in the 1990s. And it was very nice for these people because they got to be a part of history. And So I think the fact that they were able to get as many as they could, who were good performers, and there are a few children mixed in with the little people, but you can't really find them. And trying to think of other trivia. I think one of the other things that's really remarkable is that it has been translated into more foreign languages than almost any other movie. I think it's been translated into 88 languages.
That's a lot.
Because
That's crazy.
the popularity is universal. And the theme, the storytelling, basically about Dorothy says, I had to go to Oz to realize what I really wanted was in my own backyard. And that theme of home is where the heart is, that people sometimes they take for granted the love and caring of their families. And it's a wonderful lesson for children also, that there's no place like home. And I think that resonates with people who are 2 or people who are 92. And whether they live in Japan or England or the United States or Chile, wherever they live, that theme of home and family, I think, is universal.
It's amazing.
So I think that's really important. And another thing is, and we don't really necessarily appreciate the genius behind this, but if you think of, this was just a little children's book, the way they created Munchkinland and that whole sequence and everybody singing in rhyme, it's quite brilliant. And adults can pick up on the sophistication of that, but children just love it, and they don't need to know the finer, brilliance of the way the lyrics rhyme and so forth and so on. They're just entertained. And every one of the costumes in that film, every single one, was designed by one man. His name was Gilbert Adrian, and he was the head of the costume department at MGM. And he designed every single costume for every Munchkin had a different costume. And he also designed all the costumes for the big stars for regular movies. So he was quite a genius. The man who created the makeup also was a genius because he came up with all those different looks. There is just so much in the craft of the film and the different layers, the way that they used if I only had a heart, if I only had a brain, if I only had the nerve, the courage and the heart and the brain are what the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion are looking for. But like Dorothy, at the end of the movie, the wizard tells them that they always had that inside themselves. They just didn't know it. So the storytelling is it hits the heart in a beautiful way. I think that's why the film is so beloved. It continues to be part of our social, I would use the word zeitgeist. It's part of the culture. Almost everybody knows the movie. There have been so many variations based on the play and the original book. You have Wicked, Wicked 2, The Wiz. There have been all these different permutations and adaptations that spring from what was a children's book in 1900. But this film endures, and there were many Oz books. It wasn't just one. There was the Wizard of Oz, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, that is the basis for this movie. But Frank Baum wrote somewhere between 15 and 17 different Oz books. And he even had his own little silent movie company for a while. And he made all these little short Oz films in the silent days. But when anybody ever tried to do, like in the 1980s, the Disney company made a film called Return to Oz because Disney owned all the other Oz books. And Return to Oz was not a big success. It was a big flop. It's very hard to recapture what they say is lightning in a bottle. And I think that for The Wizard of Oz, you just had this convergence of all these talented people coming together, most of whom were under contract to MGM. And everything just came together in a way to create a timeless work of perfection. And it amazes me, especially because on a personal level, I can't remember not knowing about the movie and not loving the music and watching the record on the record player turn around when I was a little kid. And I never lost my affection for the movie. And then it became part of my job.
It's amazing you do something you love.
And and I've been involved with multiple re-releases and restorations. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is we put out this is about 20 years ago, maybe more. We put out a 2 CD set of all the music that had been recorded for the movie, including a lot of things that were cut out. And that was very, very successful. But the fact that we're able to continue to make it available to people in all parts of the world, that it's so available to so many people now. People don't have to wait a year like I did when I was a little kid. Wait a year until you could get to see it again. And it also inspires children. Any child that sees it just falls in love with the movie. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a special place in their heart for this movie. It's just universal in its popularity. So that's a great thing.
It's amazing. I don't think any other movies really like that.
You're right on target. That's exactly the point. It is its own universe. There's nothing else quite like it. People try to imitate it. And there was a very famous child actress who was popular around the same time as The Wizard of Oz. You may not have heard of her, but her name was Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple, there's a rumor that they wanted her for this movie, which is another lie. It's not true. That was never seriously considered. She worked at another studio. But the year after The Wizard of Oz, they put her in a Technicolor fantasy movie called The Bluebird, and it was a huge financial disaster. You just can't, you say, oh, well, that's good. I think I'll make this and copy what they did. That usually doesn't work out for anybody. Original thinking and just the way they were able to gather the talent together, the songwriters. One of the things that we have in our archive is we have a recording of the composer who wrote the music and the lyricist who wrote the words performing at the piano the whole Munchkinland sequence as a demonstration to the producer and the director and all the studio people of what Munchkinland was going to be. And you can hear their enthusiasm and that they were having fun in the creation of the music. And that's another thing. And the music for the film did earn Oscars, which is very, very important. Over the Rainbow won the Oscar for the best song. And the underscoring of the music, all the background music, that won over Gone with the Wind, which has a very famous underscore itself. Gone with the Wind pretty much dominated the Academy Awards that year. So most people and there were so many great films made that year, but nobody else really had a chance. However, they did give Judy Garland a special juvenile Oscar for her performance in The Wizard of Oz. And they didn't do that very often, but they recognized, the Academy recognized what a remarkable young lady she was. And pretty much right after The Wizard of Oz, she got to play her own age. She made a movie later that year called Babes in Arms with a gentleman named Mickey Rooney. And that was a gigantic success. And within a year or two, she was playing adults. And she was 18, 19. And, you know, everybody looked older back then. So you look back and say, she's only 18? How is that possible? But one of the nice things about Wizard of Oz is that it continues to introduce new audiences to the talents in the film, especially Judy Garland. She will always have a place where people will say, who was she? Because she had a very difficult adult life, and she passed away at only 47, and that was in 1969. But new audiences today, children find out Dorothy is Judy Garland, and then they see her in movies, and they want to learn more about her as they get older, and it earns her a place of immortality. And that's what's great about movies, cinema, is it captures people. We don't have this relevance for... There was a new documentary on PBS a couple of months ago about the American Revolution. And there's no footage of that. There was no film back then. There weren't even cameras to take pictures yet. But they made a wonderful documentary, but there's no reference to what people looked like and what they sounded like. And we have now basically 100 plus years of film that tell subsequent generations what certain people, what their talents were, what they looked like, what they sounded like. And it goes beyond movies too. It also is for newsreels, and we can hear President Roosevelt in the 1930s talk about the Depression. Film is a wonderful thing, and of course it's been, broadened by all the technology we have today with digital and so forth and so on. So we will be able to preserve what is going on now, the people that are doing great things now, both as performers or in life. Their images, their sounds, it's somewhat of an immortality. And that's what's great about filmmaking and all the things that are done for television. This preserves what is going on now for the future. So we're talking about a movie now that is 87 years old, and we can speak to it with clarity and resonance because thankfully it was well taken care of, and it looks and sounds better than it ever did. And that allows new people to discover it. When I was a kid and I watched the movie, the beginning of the movie, there's a little preface where it says, for generations, this story has enchanted audiences of all ages. I'm paraphrasing, but I was so little that I didn't know. I thought they had added that on for when they were showing it on television. I didn't know that they had put that at the beginning of the movie when it opened, because when the movie opened, the story was already close to 40 years old. And when they did Wizard of Oz stage plays in the early 1900s, these actors toured all around the country. But it was nothing like what the movie became with the music and so forth and so on. So it's really its own phenomenon.
I agree. It's amazing. It's amazing how much is achieved.
Have you always enjoyed it?
Yeah, I have. Every time I watched it, there's not been one time I've disliked it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If it's on, I end up getting hooked and watching the whole thing over and over again. But I love talking about it, and I love the fact of, when I have nieces and nephews and I get to introduce them to the Wizard of Oz, it's an exciting thing. It really is. And I love watching. I think that's one of the things that I find most remarkable is introducing the Wizard of Oz to a young child and watching their reaction to it. And it's very, very powerful. And we keep finding new ways to have people discover it. And that's also very gratifying.
Yes. Thank you so much for such great info, George. I really appreciate it. It really helped me a lot.
It's my pleasure, Jack. And what I did was I sent your mom, I kind of wrote down all the key points of when it opened at the Chinese Theater in LA, all the little dates and the costs, the budgets, and I wanted you to have basically like a fact sheet. So I wrote something up last night that I think will be really helpful. And the most important thing is to put your own personal viewpoint into what you've garnered, I should say, from watching the documentary and watching the film, and what your perspective is, and that's uniquely yours, which is always what's exciting.
Yes. Thank you.
You are welcome. It's my pleasure. So next time that you come up with a movie and you want to talk about it, I'm always available.
Of course, that sounds great. Hope you have a great weekend.
I hope you have a very good weekend, and please wish your mom a great weekend as well.
Yeah, of course.
And I want you to have a wonderful July 4th, because that's coming up next week.
Oh yeah, hope you do too.
I'm sure that the paper you're going to write is going to be superb.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure to meet you. And whenever you need me, you know where to find me and how to get me.
Of course.
Okay?
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a wonderful day. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. A lot of great info.
Mm-hmm.